Hello and welcome to Cool Schools. I'm Bob Driscoll. This is the show where we talk about anything related to schools in Central New York. Today we're talking with Jennifer Steele. She's a professor from American University about AI in classrooms and the impact it could have. Jennifer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a professor here at American University in Washington, D.C., and I started my career as an elementary school teacher and then became a trainer of teachers, became a high school teacher, and I've been a researcher for probably about 20 years. But I I understand how these new technologies impact the classroom, and I'm very interested in how they're going to affect students' experiences and transitions to the workforce down the road.
I was reading some of your work on this topic, which led me to you. AI right now is transforming like everything, every business, every industry, and education is one of those. How big of a role is AI playing in classrooms right now?
Well, I think there is some appropriate resistance to AI in schools and classrooms because the the thing people notice most obviously about AI is that and chatbots is that students can use them to cheat. So teachers obviously are concerned about this because teachers want students to learn stuff themselves. And if they're short-circuiting that process by having ChatGPT or Claude do their work for them, then they're potentially not internalizing the material. So teachers are resistant for this reason, but at the same time, teachers know that the world is changing quickly and they have to get students ready for the world as it is, which is an AI-enabled world, which means they can't stick their head in the sand. They have to help students understand how to use these tools. And so some teachers are slowly embracing and incorporating the tools, and other teachers, I think, are more hesitant.
It seems like just the beginning of this year, one of my coworkers was telling me about AI, and I was trying to learn about it myself, and I had never really used it. How fast has AI been growing in schools? Is this something new this year, or is this just now getting bigger now?
I think schools and universities have had this on their radar since early 2023. So GPT 3.5 came out in November 2022, and schools and colleges have been thinking hard about this almost immediately afterward when it became clear what it could do and how fast students and everyday folks were adopting it. So this is not, at this point, it's not new for schools. What we do know, it's quite interesting, is that among professions, teachers are actually, well, I should say tutors and people who educate others are in the top 10 professions using Claude, for example, that we have data on professions using Claude, are in the top 10 professions. The others are in the computer sciences. So this tells us that there's been pretty rapid adoption by the education community.
I was reading a paper you wrote that there are really kind of like three main threats AI poses in the classroom. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah, sure. So one threat is that it's just hard to measure what students know if students can use a tool to do the work for them. So measurement is a challenge. So if you really want to understand students' capability in some area, writing is a big one, or creating original content of visual content. Writing code is a big one, and even doing math. The chatbots are not so great at math, but they've gotten better. And so even doing math is hard to measure what students know. So the first challenge is measurement. The second challenge is that actually the chatbots can replace us. So the second challenge is that it devalues our skills if it can do work faster than professionals. And so part of the challenge is helping people get ready for the world as it is. And the third challenge is making sure that people have access to the tools that they need and that access is equitable.
What about accuracy? I've talked to a few superintendents I've had on the show over the weeks, and they say sometimes AI can be used as a tool, but not the be all end all, right? Like there can be some accuracy problems with it.
Oh, thank you for that, Bob. That's exactly right. I forgot about accuracy. Chatbots hallucinate, and so this is a known problem. And and the reason that they hallucinate is the way that they work is their massive predictive models. So ChatGPT alone, 3.0, had about 175 billion parameters, and each of those parameters is helping us estimate the probability of the word that comes next in a in something that you're writing or creating. And so when you're estimating massive probabilities across all of human language, there is without a logical framework for how the world works, how physics work, how space and time work, when you're just predicting words, there is a high tendency to invent things that sound right. So ChatGPT, of course, doesn't have a human mind, so it doesn't know it's inventing. But this is why hallucinations happen, and it's why chatbots can be wildly inaccurate, even while they're doing things that seem almost magical.
Now, things like when I was in school, like reading, writing, all that stuff seemed like really basic. You know, like a teacher gives you, a book to read or something like that. Can AI kind of get around that? Like, is this going to be a problem for students that are not learning these skills as accurately as maybe we did when we were in school?
That's right. We have always been able to cheat. So I was a high school teacher about 20 years ago, and students had ways to get around doing the reading for an English class, for example. That has always existed. You can always find online summaries. But I think now there one of the challenges is that the cheating is harder to detect because we can't just search whether somebody has written the exact words that the student submitted or something similar, because the chatbots, the large language models, are generating new content that has never existed. So we can't easily detect plagiarism in the way that we used to be able to. So that makes it more difficult. And also, the tools are just more sophisticated than they were in our generation. They just can produce things that sound human written and that sound nuanced and that sound highly, highly consistent with how educated people talk about common things. But what they can't do well is they don't have agency and they can't solve novel problems. We still need humans to provide direction about what we want to do and what we want to achieve. And that's what schools need to be teaching students, is how to have agency over their own learning and their own goals.
What about creativity? Is that kind of along the same line where the AI can't necessarily have that human creativity that could make things stand out for students?
Bob, I think creativity is a tricky one because the chatbots can do pretty astonishing things in terms of generating new songs, poems, lyrics, essays, novels, screenplay ideas. It can emulate so much of what's out there so quickly. Images, I should say, as well, visual art. So this is where it becomes very subjective, whether that stuff is slop and cliche or whether it is pretty much as good as a lot of the average stuff that's out there already. That is very subjective. And that's why I think creativity I think human generated things will probably rise in value over time. As AI becomes more common, there will be a desire for things that are innately human. But at the same time, there's a lot that I mean, we already know that if you go to a blockbuster film, it's going to have a fairly formulaic script that's easy to predict. And AI can create that script, that formulaic cliche script really quickly.
There's certainly some benefits to it in every aspect as well, which is interesting. What about copyright when we come to things like that? Like you mentioned music and stuff like that. Are there copyright concerns with AI?
There are huge copyright concerns, Bob, because the data, the models are being trained on existing things that humans have created. And so the question is, are humans being paid for the things that they've created that are being used to create the power of these chatbots that could replace them? So this is really challenging. It was a huge factor in the actors strike and in the writers strike because you don't want to go to a film and see one of your favorite actors who's not really acting the part, but is just something that looks and sounds like them that was created by a computer is acting the part. There's something inherently unsatisfying about that. And of course, unfair to the actor if they're not getting paid for that work. And so there are huge, that's a kind of a likeness question, but there are huge issues with copyright as well, because if AI is generating content that sounds human created, that's because it's completely emulating things that humans have created. And so there's a question of how are people going to get paid for that work if they can no longer get a job doing that work as people have AI do it.
I'm sure many teachers, college professors are trying to figure out, how do I handle this? Do we embrace this technology? Do we try to stop students from using it? Like, what do you think is the best way to go with that?
I think, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, we have to take a both and approach. But absolutely, be if we want students to really have to engage in the effort of learning hard things, there will be certain tasks where we will have to make them technology free or AI free because it can be too tempting for children to, especially children who are they're still kids, they're still learning kind of self-regulation and self-control and metacognition. We have to create spaces where they don't have the temptation of letting the software do the work for them, where they're engaging with other people around ideas and skills, and where they feel safe enough to take the risk of putting in the effort to learn hard things. That's going to be really important because AI is fast, and by being fast, it is tempting to replace the slowness that is inherent in learning. So that's huge. But at the same time, we have to help students understand how these tools work and what it means to use them ethically and responsibly.
I was talking with a teacher here earlier this week who was telling me it's getting hard to even tell if the student is using AI because like he described it as like two students could put the same thing into their AI and get two different responses. Are there things teachers can look out for in assignments and writings that they might think, okay, this is done by AI, or is it just too hard?
I think if teachers are thinking that there's a gotcha where they can prove that it's AI, that is increasingly difficult. It's just not as easy as it was with old school plagiarism detectors for the reason that you stated. AI generates something new every time. So you can ask the same question and it will give you something different. And so you can't say for sure that AI did something because it sounds like anodyne generic writing. And so, how do you distinguish anodyne generic writing from um, writing that's actually anodyne and generic from something that was created by a computer? So that's the challenge. I think that what teachers know if a student is producing something that is inconsistent with other ways that they've demonstrated their knowledge. But the most important thing teachers can do is set clear parameters for what types of AI use are acceptable on a given assignment and what are the and how students should disclose and reflect on that use so that students are aware of how they're using the tools and what they are getting out of it or maybe losing as a result of having used it.
For parents who may just be hearing about AI, I know it's being used in schools. Can you kind of give us like a basic, like, what is it? Like, where are students finding this AI to use? How are they getting it? Those kinds of things.
The students are finding AI everywhere. So if you put in a Google search now, in 2025, the first thing that comes up is from Google Gemini. It's an AI generated answer to your question that's synthesizing from across many websites and sources. So you don't have to put in a lot of effort to engage with AI. Grammarly, that students frequently use to proofread their homework, is AI enabled. Snapchat is AI enabled. Autocomplete on your phone is AI enabled. So students are using it all the time, and you can think of parents can think of AI at this stage with large language models as kind of like autocomplete on steroids. It is generating things that sound like things that educated humans would write on whatever thing you ask it about. And so, what parents should know also is that AI can be great as a just in time tutor. If their students having trouble with factoring, at simplifying fractions, they can ask ChatGPT, how do I teach my child to simplify fractions? Please give me a few examples and explain to me how they work. And it will produce this for you, and you can use that to have a conversation with your child. You can also have teach your child to use ChatGPT as a tutor that helps them when they're stuck. it's hard to find a human tutor that is on call 24/7 that can answer any possible question. These tools can do that, but what is important is that students not just ask it for the answers and paste them into the homework without learning the material. And that is where they need a lot of metacognition and self-direction.
You bring up a great point with the tutoring option for parents. So a parent could just type in a question like, "How do I teach my kid this?" Like you brought up the fraction thing, and it'll give them a way to do it.
Absolutely. And in fact, about 7% of the way people are using Claude, one of the popular large language models that's publicly available and free, many versions are free, about 7% of how people are using it is self-help tutoring, just learning things, teaching themselves things. So you can ask it how to do just about anything, how to do a recipe, how to plan a vacation. You can ask it how to solve complex programming challenges, math challenges, and it will explain it to you. And if you still don't understand it, you can ask it for points of clarification.
No, I've kind of I've heard you mention language model, and in my trying to teach myself AI, I've heard that too. Is that kind of like where the AI kind of takes a bunch of different things it's heard from a bunch of different people and comes up with responses? Can you explain what language model means?
Yeah, so a large language model is it is a certain type of artificial intelligence where it is trained initially, these models were trained just on texts, and they were trained on things like blogs, websites, books that were in the public domain, or sometimes weren't, which has led to lawsuits. But they're trained on they're trained on terabytes, huge, huge, huge quantities of data that has been written by humans in English and other languages. And they are trained from that to anticipate what word will come next in a sequence of words based on what other people have written about this thing. And so when they're first written, they're just trained on existing text. But then the AI companies hire humans. This is called the fine tuning part. They hire humans to write questions and answers about their field to further improve the precision and accuracy of these tools. And then the machines are trained on those texts, the ones that are written specifically about certain fields and to show what questions and answers should look like. And so, what these machines were initially designed to do, the large language models, is they are trained to generate language. And that's why logic and math has not been as accurate in the AI revolution since 2022, because a lot of that revolution has been about generating language and writing.
You mentioned how like parents can use this to help tutor their kids. Can teachers use this to help develop lessons maybe too? Like can they put in, hey, I'm looking for a creative way to explain this to kids, and would that help teachers in that way?
Teachers can do that, and the evidence suggests that teachers are doing that. So, when we have data on how teachers are using these tools, it part of it is giving feedback on writing assignments, and the other part is generating lesson plans or activities. So it's I today I want to teach my students about the history of the French Revolution. What are some engaging ways to engage that to get them thinking about core themes of the French Revolution? And so AI can quickly give you some ideas on how you would go about that with step-by-step activities. And so teachers are doing this to augment the textbooks and resources they have and to augment their own creativity.
Do you see this popping up like in a lot of places? Like, is it safe to say educators are changing the way they teach and the way their lessons are because of AI?
My hunch is that those uses of AI to generate lesson plans are not changing pedagogy because they're based on things that are already out there in published texts. So they're based on textbooks to which the training models have access. So my sense is that this use of AI to create activities and lessons plans could probably just add a little bit more diversity to what's happening in the classroom. Of course, the challenge comes if teachers are using these tools uncritically and maybe teaching something that's inaccurate because of hallucinations. So teachers, all like everyone else, have to be sure that they are fact checking or confirming that the data that the large language models are giving them is correct.
You know, a friend of mine put it pretty simply how they see AI in the classroom. He compared it to the calculator of when we were in school, right? Is it kind of similar to that? Like when we were in school, the calculator was there, it was a good resource, but we still had to learn the math. Is AI kind of the same way, where it's there, it's a good resource, but we still need to learn the topic?
I think that's I my initial reaction is was that it's just like the calculator and that this is just a shorthand tool that will make things easier for people that struggle with writing or with generating text. This is a calculator for writing, basically, is how I thought of it. So this is going to be a great equalizer, and yet most people won't want to use it that much of the time. Now, as AI has gained capabilities and as the AI companies are moving beyond writing and generating text, as they're moving more toward controlling a sequence of activities that we do in our workplace, I think it's going to end up being a lot more of a general purpose tool than the calculator. And the other danger with the calculator is that there is a danger that we don't learn our math facts. So it is tempting, and sometimes schools have placed less emphasis on learning basic math facts that we can do in our head because calculators exist. So for some students, that's good because they would have always struggled to learn those math facts. And for other students, it's limiting because learning those math facts would have accelerated their skills so much more quickly. And so we really have to be careful that we don't let these tools shortchange kids' opportunity to learn.
I think you mentioned earlier too, like AI can help limit social disparities. Is that something that you've noticed?
I think that people think about AI in two ways regarding social disparities. One is, will kids from less advantaged backgrounds and less advantaged schools have access to powerful versions of these tools? So that's an equity of digital access, an equity of software access question. And I think that we still don't know the answer to that, but there have been huge investments by school districts, especially, lower income school districts in technology over the past 20 years. And so we see that digital divide closing to a large extent, but at what cost? Because the reverse trend and the reverse concern is that we could enter an age where wealthier children have access to human tutors and teachers, and students from lower income countries or lower income neighborhoods or regions or schools have access to bots which are much cheaper than humans. And so we don't want to enter a system where ideally where only the wealthy have access to humans and everybody else gets a chatbot.
Are there any other advantages, disadvantages to AI in the classroom that we haven't touched on that you think are important?
I think AI it's almost like a magic tool because it can do these things that we never envisioned that computers could do. In the past, I've compared it to Megan, the murderous robot doll from the films from a few years ago, because Megan knows everything about everything, and she's like a perfect caregiver to children, except that she's also a murderous doll. And so she's a robot who doesn't have any ethics or morals or understand the implications of her actions. And so I think when we think about AI, we have to understand that it can do amazing things, but that it doesn't have any of the rational or empathic thought capacity of humans, and that therefore we must lean into and strengthen those human skills so that students are able to thrive in the decades to come.
Megan was a great movie. I did watch that. I haven't seen the second one yet though, but I got high hopes. Do you think AI is going to like keep growing? Like this technology is going to keep advancing over the next couple of years, right?
Absolutely, because there is a vast amount of money going into the expansion of computing power and data centers, and just there's an arms race in a sense for who is going to have the best and most powerful and most accurate models, because there's an assumption that those folks are going to own the market. And so it is the the folks who are working on this are not slowing down anytime soon if they don't have to, and therefore the capacities of these tools are going to grow.
All right, Jennifer Steele, professor at American University. Thank you very much for talking with us today on AI in the classroom. It's a very important topic.
Thank you so much, Bob.